We're continuing our Shulchan Aruch or Chaim Hilchot Shabbat, and we're up to Siman Resh Tzadi Gimel, the halachot of Arvit of Motzei Shabbat. So we've gone through the halachot of Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat, Kiddush of Friday night, Shabbat morning, the Kiddush in the morning, Tefilat Musaf, all of those we have discussed, the Kriyat Torah Shabbat afternoon, the Mincha of Shabbat afternoon. Now, the halachot of Motzei Shabbat. Ma'acharin Tefilat Arvit kedei leosif b'chol HaKodesh. We delay Tefilat Arvit of Motzei Shabbat in order to be able to add some minutes from Chol to Shabbat. Just like you have a mitzvah of Tosefet Shabbat when Shabbat comes in on Friday afternoon, that at least 5 minutes before you want to accept Shabbat. You don't want to wait until the sundown. You want to start Shabbat a few minutes. The Ramban writes at least 5 minutes earlier. The same applies also on Motzei Shabbat. On the other end, tail end of Shabbat, that you want to exit from Shabbat a few minutes late at least to show the love, the care that we are holding on to it as something dear. Leosif mechol al hakodesh. Now, this concept, the Ruach Chaim writes that a person should not start Tefilat Arvit before at least half an hour after the 12th hour of the day, means the end of the day. And it says Al Korpalim, at least you should do 20 minutes after Kriyat Mukrav, which is in the Muslim countries, that's what they had, right? Kriyat Mukrav, which is about 7 minutes after sunset. So that would give you 27 minutes after sunset to start Arvit, and that's what the Ben Ish Chai brings in Parashat Vayetze as well. Now, Rav Moshe Levi writes in his Menuchat Ahava, in Chelek Aleph, that even those who are machmir not to do any melacha on Motzei Shabbat until an hour and a reva, that means 72 minutes after Shkia, which is the Shita, generally known as the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, that Maran Shulchan Aruch also conquers with that, sides with the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam. Still, you could daven Arvit with the tzibur that's davening before Rabbeinu Tam. You could do that. That's not a problem. Just don't do any melacha, at least the melacha deoraita, until then. Now, we have spoken about the Shita of Rav Moshe Feinstein, that perhaps Rabbeinu Tam in the United States of America is maximum 60 minutes, so it's not 72 minutes. And we also have mentioned that these things are sha'ot zmaniot, are halachic minutes, not necessarily flat clock minutes. So deep in the winter, around now we started getting longer a little bit, but 2 weeks ago was the shortest day. When you have, for instance, for example, if you have the day that starts at 7 and finishes at 5, so then you have 14 hours of night and only 10 hours of day. So how do you calculate the sha'ot zmaniot? You take the hours of the day, between the daybreak and sundown, simplified, right? Now, without getting into the Machloket Gra and Magen Avraham, and you divide that, you multiply it by 60 divided by 12. So if you do that, you'll get 50 minutes in every hour, because every day is 12 hours halachically. So even the 10-hour day is 12 hours. It's just that if you multiple and divide it by 12, you'll get 50 minutes every hour. So when you talk about sha'a v'reva, like 72 halachic minutes, would end up being around 60 minutes anyways in this season. Anyhow, so that's again something to be mindful of, but you could certainly daven earlier and then wait from doing melacha until afterwards. You could even be driven in a car to your house if you're not driving yourself. before Rabbeinu Tam, if you're machmir on the shita of Rabbeinu Tam, you're not doing it. Other people who are more lenient will be driving you, and that would be okay as well, so long as you have davened arvit, and the time has at least reached according to the shita of the Geonim, which has been the general minhag of the Sfaradim, despite the psak of Shulchan Aruch. So now, by the way, you have to understand that many of the Hasidim in Europe, they were noheg, not just la'achmir, but even la'hakel, like Rabbeinu Tam, which stopped in the United States of America. They would go, the Satmar Rav, it's said about him that when he came to the United States, he would be driven to shul, after Shkia Friday night for davening mincha. Because that was the minhag of the Hasidim. They started tefillah 20 minutes, mincha 20 minutes, 30 minutes after mincha, after Shkia, right? So Moshe Feinstein told him, he said, look, Europe maybe was different, but here the minhag is not like the Rabbeinu Tam, the Hakel, and the greatness of the Satmar Rav was that he accepted that, and you have like a unified, uniform minhag, both with the Sfaradim, Hasidim, Litaim, everyone, Ashkenazim and Sfaradim and Hasidim, we are machmir for beginning of Shabbat, not to rely on Rabbeinu Tam, but on Motzei Shabbat. Chacham Ovadia says every Ben Torah should try to be machmir like the shita of Rabbeinu Tam. And the Chafetz Chaim adds over here that min hadin really is mutar, even if you do a little bit. At Zman HaMevuar b'Seif Bet, we're going to discuss in Seif Bet, which is not the shita of Rabbeinu Tam, but Ra'ui v'nachon v'chen min ha'kol Yisrael la'acher et ha'tfilah k'dei she'yitosef yoter mechol al ha'kodesh. We add a little bit more, as much as possible, to Shabbat, and we delay going out of Shabbat. Now, the reason that especially the Hasidim have this in a major way, they sing on Sudash Lishit. There's a lot of singing in Divrei Torah, and Rav Soloveitchik, one of his Talmidim, told me that he heard from him that he remembers in Europe as a little kid that the Hasidim would elongate the shirim, the tishbachot in Sudash Lishit in an unbelievable way. And so I didn't understand it when I was a kid, but then I did feel, even though I wasn't tuned into the halachic point, I saw in their faces that they didn't want to get rid of Shabbat. They wanted to hold on to the tail end of Shabbat. They loved it so much. They cared so much for Shabbat. They wanted another minute of Shabbat, another minute of Shabbat. And that's something important, as we delve into such a busy, multitasked life, to be able to hold on to the Kedusha of Shabbat and feel the preciousness of every minute is something important. It's not just the Seif in Shulchan Aruch, delay the Arvit because you want to add from Chol to Kodesh, but it's really the way we feel it. We love Shabbat. It's our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and something so very important and very precious. So it says the Mishna Berura, same is with when Yom Tov is on Motzei Shabbat, still the minhag is not necessarily to say the Mizmorim, because again, the minhag is to say lezamer kodem ma'ariv, to say Zmirot before Arvit, that we say the Mizmor Averokim Yechonenu, right? Other Mizmorim, as it's mentioned in the Sidurim, but if the Tisha B'Av falls on Motzei Shabbat, or if Yom Tov falls on Motzei Shabbat, we skip those Mizmorim. Now, why do we do Mizmorim? The Midrash says because Shabbat is like a kala, it's like a bride, right? So you escort the kala, Shabbat shenikret kala malketa, we escorted lelavot Shabbat malketa b'shirot v'tishbachot. When we sent her off with music, we sent her off with happiness and with mizmorim, uchteita b'midrash, as it is brought in the midrash. And additionally, ki al yedei zeh nitacher ha'ma'ariv, it's a practical way. Shirot v'tishbachot is a practical way to make arvit a little bit later. It's a practical thing. It's like nowadays, it's good because we have Sudash Lishit in the shul, so that takes some time. But again, especially if you're machmir like Rabbeinu Tam, you need to pass the time between Shkia until half an hour after, and that is what we do with Shirot. It says, Maran Shulchan Aruch in Seif Bet Tzarich Lizaher Mila'asot Melacha Ad Sheyera'u Shlosha Kochavim Ketanim. You cannot do melacha until 3 small stars appear in the sky. Now, let me explain a little preface to this. There are 3 different types of kochavim. There are kochavim gedolim, those who you see right away when nightfall happens, right? When the light goes away, they're closer, they're bigger, and you see them, shining. And then there are kochavim benonim, the average one, and then there are kochavim ketanim that you could see only when there's absolute night, there's no light left in the horizon, and then you could see even those, a naked eye could see even those faded, so to speak, smaller kochavim. Now, the halacha would be 3 kochavim benonim would suffice. That would already be a sign of nightfall. Now, why is kochavim? Why is this measurement? Why not minutes and hours? For a very simple reason. Because nightfall is a level of light. So you need, the level of light and darkness is determined by how far you are turned away as the part of earth you're on from the source of light being the sun. So if you translate that in a more sophisticated language, how many degrees is the sun below the horizon, right? So let's call it 16.1 degrees below the horizon, which is the very accurate level. And that is translating the sugyas in the Gemara, in Masechet Pesachim and others, Shabbat and others, and that the Gemara is there talking about the equinoxes in Eretz Yisrael. So imagine if you learned, 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, something happens. Now, that 13 and a half minutes, which is 3/4 of a mil, 18 minutes, right? 3/4 of that would be 13 and a half minutes. So that means that in Eretz Yisrael, on equinoxes, when the day and night are equal 6 hours, 12 hours is 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock, basically. Day and night, equal hours, that's when 13 and a half is correct. Now, if you go to Eretz Yisrael on equinoxes and you see what happens 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, the way you could translate that to Greenland or to Los Angeles or to North Europe, for that matter, is see how many degrees below the horizon is the sun in Eretz Yisrael on equinoxes after 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, and translate that to other places. And other places, it could be 18, 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending on where they are, it will change. But the degrees below the horizon is something we could deal with, and if you go on My Zmanim, you have everything available. It's awesome, and 16.1 degrees below the horizon is something to go with. But in the time of Chazal, the way they knew that was by the visibility of stars, because you know what happens when you have the sun certain degrees below the horizon, you have lack of light on where you are, and that lack of light by degrees makes more stars visible to your sight. So that's the way they dealt with it, because that is the accurate way. Now, Me'ikaratin, 3 average stars would suffice. But people are not necessarily baki, people are not necessarily well versed in what is considered a big star, what is considered that the first one I see is this one. Yeah, the first 3, those are big ones, that we know. But the difference between Benoni and Katan, the average and small, is very subtle. So therefore, the halacha has it, you just do 3 stars, 3 small stars, and that would be the measuring tool. That would be the barometer. Says the Shulchan Aruch This shlosha kochavim ketanim, these three small stars, velo yihiyu mefuzarim, they should not be scattered el ha'retzufim. You could see three stars back to back, next to each other. It's not that you say that I see one star there and one star there. That sometimes is the sign that they're not kochavim ketanim. Right? If you've been in any place without any artificial light, right? You go to the mountains, the Yosemite, whatever, or if you've experienced like a massive regional blackouts, which I have, like when we had like a tornado slash hurricane in back in East one, and the entire region lost power. It was actually Friday night. It was an awesome experience. So we went out, and you all of a sudden see thousands of extra stars that you never saw before. It's because there's no light pollution, so to speak. There's no artificial lights, so you get to see a lot more stars. If you have enough darkness, you should be able to see back-to-back stars, no problem. So therefore, Shkaruch says that these stars have to be retzufim, they have to be next to each other, not scattered around. If it's a cloudy day, what do you do then? Then you wait until you for sure know that enough time has lapsed that you would be able to see three small stars. Says the Mishna Berura to that, before you see three small stars, it's asur to do melacha because maybe still day. Halachically speaking, would have sufficed with three average stars. We're not baki, we're not experts in this, and therefore maybe they are considered bigger ones, and you think they're average, and therefore we just go with three small stars, three more faded stars, and that certainly would be sufficient. Now, the Likutei Pri Chadash says on Yoreh De'ah that if the sky is lit up like the light of the day, then it's not considered ben hashmashot. Lo nechshav oto azman rak ben hashmashot. It's not considered night, rather it's considered ben hashmashot. Ve'evio ha'gaon Rabbi Akiva Eger b'chidushav b'Yoreh De'ah siman resh samech bet. If you still have daylight, then it's ben hashmashot. It's not even the beginning of the nightfall yet. Ubeve'ura katav the mistalek ha'admimut mikol kipat harakia. If the redness has been removed from the entire horizon, then en anu chosheshin b'mash mazhir. Then even if you have a reflection of light in the sky through the clouds and whatnot, we are still not concerned about that. V'da'od the Besefer Tiferet Yisrael masrich shlosha ktanim levad shlosha benonim. In Tiferet Yisrael says you need to have three average and three small ones. In other words, you need to have at least 6 stars that 3 of them are average, 3 small, because that's how you could compare that these are smaller ones, and that's what you need. I don't know really a source for that. He says maybe the reason is that we don't recognize what is considered small and what is considered benonim. Therefore, you need to have some sort of barometer, some sort of comparables, so to speak, up there in the sky that you could compare. Say, oh, this is benoni, that's small. This is for sure small, and that would be sufficient as well. Now, the reason that they have to be retzufim is mishum tosefet Shabbat. Even if you see 3 small ones that are not back to back, and then you wait a few minutes afterwards, like 3-4 minutes, then that gives you the concept of tosefet Shabbat as well. Umutar la'asod melacha, you could do melacha afterwards. The ikar tam haresufim mishum tosefet. The main reason of a requirement of the immediate stars back to back next to each other is because when you have that, more time has lapsed. So you not just have hit the bare minimum of nightfall, but you also have added some minutes from Kodesh, from Chol to Kodesh. So that's the reason that if you see even scattered 3 small stars and you wait 5 minutes after that, you're good to go.
Does altitude affect the calculation?
Yes, it does, but that is again because the you're saying if you're on top of a mountain or something.
Right, or on the top of a building because the sunset would be longer.
Yeah, it's minute. Well, if you are at the elevation of, for instance, 35,000 feet, which is normal plane elevation, will give you 20 minutes of difference. So that's obviously something important. But even you have like a hilltop, the buildings usually doesn't make that much of a difference, maybe a few seconds. But if you're on top of a mountain, your house is built like in 6,000 feet elevation in Yosemite's or whatnot, or you're staying there. It doesn't have to be your house. If you're on a trip and you're staying Shabbat in the heights of mountains for skiing and for so on, you're going for that type of experience. But nevertheless, you're 6,000-7,000 feet up the sea level. Then of course your thing is going to be almost 4 or 5 minutes different, and you have to follow that difference. Your shkia is going to be a bit later, and so on. Again, on the plane, it becomes a big question whether you go after the halacha of where you are up in the sky or that point on earth below, if the plane would be landing right there and then in that same place on earth, that place on earth. And I've spoken to many poskim in the past 20 years about this. It seems the consensus to be that we don't reckon with where the plane is up high, we reckon with where it is down there, meaning the same place that it is up there on the ground, which is 20 minutes different. So therefore, if you see sunrise from the plane, it's still not day for you. Because if you would lower the plane to the ground, that would be 20 minutes before sunrise, right? And if you're saying sunset, then maybe that's bad news if you have not davened mincha yet. This happens when you travel El Al to Eretz Yisrael. On the way there, it's very, very difficult because they go up north to the almost North Pole, passing on Greenland. They don't go straight. So what happens is,
why is that?
It makes more sense for the winds and the spin of the earth. Yeah, a lot of calculations. What's that?
Not to fly over grave.
Yeah, they have other things as well, but it's practical also. So if you go there, so then you end up having shacharit. It becomes day and it turns back to night in a matter of 2.5-3 hours. So you have to be really on top of it, put on talit and tefillin, daven shacharit right away, take the thing off and be ready, brace for mincha, and then you could daven arvit right away. It's like mamash like that. You have to be, and nowadays recently they actually dim the windows, so you can't really know what time it is. If you would have no clue what time it is outside, unless you're following the time level on the monitors on your thing.
There's an application there.
There's an application also there. Yeah, there is it's part of the El Al monitoring, so you could see where is Netzach Hama when it's thing, but you have to really be on top of it because the window is really, really short. But again, be as it may, that will follow the level down on the ground. But for your question, yes, if you're up elevated in areas up high, it makes a difference, and it also, when you're in the levels down below, also makes a difference. So if you're going, spending Shabbat down in Grand Canyon, down there they have something. I don't know what works down there, right? But if you're in a valley like that, area covered from both sides with mountains, also would make a difference in your Shabbat. Again, this is Gemara in Masechet Shabbat that says, I want my Chelek to be from those who take in Shabbat in the valley and exit Shabbat, and Motzei Shabbat on top of the mountain, because this way Shabbat comes in earlier and goes out later, and it's just a longer Shabbat. So that is Tiveria and Sipori. One of Sipori was on top of the mountain. Tiveria, of course, is a depressed area. It's like in the valley. So therefore, that would be really sugya that's discussed already in the Gemara. We will stop here, and Bezat Hashem will pick up in the days to come. Hazak Baruch.